Hello, I'm Sam Rahimi, VP of Earned and Owned Media at AdCellerant. I've been an SEO for about 15 years, and that's been inclusive of everyone from your small to medium-sized businesses up to your Fortune 500 companies. Today, I want to talk to you about an internal documentation leak from Google Search Content Warehouse API. It's really stirred up the industry and really has kind of revealed some unprecedented findings tied to how Google ranks websites within their search platform. So I'm going to speak to some of those insights. Some people are calling Google liars after these documentation have been released. So we're going to dive in and try to find out exactly why that is. So in early May of 2024, Google leaked almost 2,600 documents or modules rather, that included up to 14,000 various ranking features. These modules included ranking signals from your traditional links, some of the things that we would expect, to clickstream data, something that we might not expect, even everything down to the size and the format of various font and stylistic elements within a web page. We don't totally know whether these documentation were actual documents or maybe considered test API documentation, but we have seen and verified that many of the findings within the documents align to some of the findings within the industry. There are a lot of prominent members of the SEO space that have kind of tested and retested some of these findings and are finding them to essentially validate the credibility of the API documents. And this is essentially why people are starting to call Google liars in this case. There are many prominent contacts at Google, including Gary Iles, John Mueller, that have really made some pretty significant public statements that have led to kind of branched out into a multitude of media that basically say that this finding or that finding is incorrect when these documentation in fact validate that those findings were correct. So these individuals, along with others, have essentially discredited some prominent and well thought out research in the SEO industry that turned out to be true. So that's where the sentiment of liar comes from. But ultimately, I do have to kind of understand the intention here from Google's perspective. They inevitably are a business attempting to protect their proprietary information, but it does kind of create a bit of a touchy situation nonetheless. So what are the major insights from this leak? Let's kind of dive into some of those details. So the first one that was most interesting to me, at least as a starting point, because it's been around for such a long time, is domain authority. Despite Google having consistently and publicly denied the use of domain authority as a ranking metric, the leak in fact confirms that site-wide authority metrics do influence rankings. The documentation specifically indicated that domain authority, including kind of the overall authority or credibility rather, and trustworthiness of the website and domain, plays a sizable role in dictating ranking decisions. And that's, that is, if we aren't familiar with domain authority, that is a 0 to 100 scale, 0 being the worst, 100 being the best. It's generally a metric that applies to every single website on the internet, and has been a tough one to influence. So it's, for I'd say over a decade now, the industry has somewhat ignored that metric because it is has been, again, mentioned a number of times by a number of different Google contacts that it is not a ranking factor. That now is in fact confirmed as a ranking factor. In addition to this, and this one candidly was the most interesting for me personally, was click data. I'll read you a snippet from an article that I had perused. User interaction data, including clicks and impressions, play a significant role in ranking algorithms. The nav boost algorithm is specifically designed to adjust ranking based on the user's data. Now, I've been telling my clients for years now that it makes sense that if someone conducts a search and people click on the first option, then click back to the search engine, the search results, and click on the second option, and then close their browser, that experience is indicative of the searcher finding what they were looking for. So it would make sense that search engines like Google would use that information to re-rank search results. In that scenario, the second result should now go to the top, and the first result should maybe go further down the list. This was never publicly confirmed, and Google has many times said that they don't use any kind of click-through data as a ranking signal. But there's a lot of documentation within this API documentation leak that absolutely support this. And interestingly enough, during the DOJ antitrust case that was conducted a few years ago now, Pandu Nayak was indicated that Nav Boost, the algorithm behind this click feature, has been around since 2005. Which is very interesting. So that tells us that this click data has potentially been utilized for several decades now, essentially, and it makes sense that Google wouldn't necessarily tell you this, because with my understanding of the SEO industry and many people's understanding of the SEO industry, it does create the opportunity to influence the rankings in a disingenuous way, let's call it. You could technically pay somebody to say, hey, go, get a bunch of people click on my website, and that'll ultimately support me in the rankings. This is an interesting scenario because everyone will just game the system, as history tends to tell us. And that's really, the gaming of the system and this manipulative SEO practice is ultimately why Google has adapted over the years. So I get where this lie kind of encourages people to identify and create kind of better quality content over the course of time, as opposed to just manipulating the search results. So there is some positive intention there potentially. That being said, again, I'm trying to play both sides of the coin here. The more someone struggles with SEO, the more likely they are to spend on Google Ads. Put your conspiracy theory hat on there and see where that takes you. So there's definitely some interesting findings. I wouldn't necessarily call it a lie. I think it's partly just business, but it definitely stirred the pot with the industry nevertheless. The next item I wanted to go through was what's called the Sandbox Effect. So within the documentation, it indicated that websites undergo what's called a sandbox period. So this is essentially where the website's visibility is restricted based on the age of the host domain. So if the website is new, it essentially falls into a sandbox for a period of time. Now, there is some intention behind this with Google. They basically want to ensure that all of the new sites that are flooding the web are not maybe built by spam bots and are not specifically designed to spread malware or something along those lines. So there is some true intention behind that. What I think is interesting about this, though, and relevant to us and our clients is this could have some kind of correlation with the dip in performance that we see when sites go through a redesign. Many times when people go through redesign, they change their domain, and we do see a little bit of that sandbox effect, if you will, a period of time where visibility is kind of in a lull before it jumps back up again. So perhaps this is kind of a necessary challenge that we have to deal with when we go through a redesign, but that could be one of the correlating factors there. Outside of these major items, there were similar themes that very much align to the SEO strategies that we consistently work on a day-to-day basis. The freshness of your content was one of the major items. Search engines, Google in this case, and according to the API documentation, keep a log of the last 20 updates to a given page. So think about the number of times that you've updated a page within your website over the last year plus. I would be willing to guess it's not 20, but that gives you some indication of how often we should be updating the content within our website. It's not always just about expanding the size of the site and the number of content topics that we include. It's about updating them and freshening them up for updated search trends or industry updates. In addition to that, link quality, unsurprisingly, came up on the list. We did see some articles recently that were getting passed around that links aren't as important as they used to be. This throws a dagger straight through that claim. Links were mentioned a number of times throughout the documentation, still absolutely a large ranking factor. Again, I would argue that maybe that was just the Googlers trying to feed a dash of misinformation into the internet so that it's not manipulating, we SEOs are not manipulating the search results. A couple other items, user engagement. How engaged is somebody within the page? That means you should be creating very high quality, highly engaging content. And then, of course, and good segue, the relevancy of the content, something, again, that we're always working on for our clients. So what would be some of my recommendations based on this leak and some of the information that has come out of it? First thing I would say is take a look at the information within the leak yourself. There is a lot more beyond what I've covered here, and I mean a ton. It doesn't take a short amount of time to run through 2,600 modules of different information, API documentation. It is worth kind of staying informed. It is worth using maybe even the summaries of that documentation to just kind of upgrade your level of understanding of SEO. In addition to that, I would always recommend, and I have continued to recommend this, have web services run alongside your SEO and vice versa, right? Whatever a web services manager or like a developer is doing, they should have an SEO involved from time to time. And then SEO should also have a web services manager involved from time to time. So that way, we can cover the quality of the user experience alongside our ability to manage our visibility in search. In addition to that, consider bumping up your SEO budget. The challenge with that is that SEO is littered with low quality services, guarantees, these kinds of things. It is a get what you pay for industry, but that does mean garbage in, garbage out. Don't skimp on your SEO line item. The next recommendation I have for you is to think in detail about your sales process. Everything from the steps that process requires to the questions that you receive to the objections even that you receive. If that information isn't clearly and specifically articulated on your website and throughout your web presence, then there's probably a gap there that needs to be filled. So as you can see, the insights from this leak have really underscored the importance of aligning to these ranking factors, having some kind of SEO incorporated into your day-to-day, month-to-month strategy, or at least having an SEO kind of over your shoulder, validating some of what you're doing within the day-to-day. There is, like I said, a lot more documentation incorporated into this leak that indicates many other items, and you can of course bet that we will be evaluating it consistently and much more deeply and making any adjustments to our existing SEO strategies. But the good thing is that I would argue this validates very much of what we are already doing for our clients and the value that we bring to them every day. Without further ado, hope that this was valuable for you. Hope that you've learned something about the Google Search API leak and a bit about your SEO strategy as well, and where AdCellerant can support you.